while we give everyone just a few more moments, if you want to go ahead and put in the chat box where you're viewing from. I just want to make sure that the chat box is working so that if you have questions throughout the presentation, we can see them. I am currently in Baltimore, Maryland. And John, you're in sunny Florida.
Yep, outside of Tampa Bay area.
We got Iowa, Minneapolis, Tampa, Florida. I love the wide variety. It's always fun to me when we get one person from each coast, like each, side of the United States. We got another Tampa, Florida. They must be your friends, John.
I love it.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said earlier, I love to see when we get a wide variety of places, and it seems to be that. We have someone just logged on from Texas. Welcome, Anne Marie, and welcome to everyone else as well. John, thank you so much for being here. Leap absolutely loves having you on our webinars, as I mentioned to you, but I'd love to share with everyone, you were one of our top viewed webinars last year in 2022, so we figured it'd be a great way to start off 2023.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce John, and then we'll let him get started with his presentation. John Kenny is the Chief Executive Officer at Cotney Consulting. Prior to joining Cotney, John had 45 years of experience in the construction industry. John started his career by working as a roofing apprentice at a family business in the Northeast. He also managed many successful projects in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania markets before continuous accomplishments in Florida. Because of his skills and hard work, he progressed from roofing laborer to foreman, estimator, chief estimator, vice president, chief operating officer with his various companies. John, you are an amazing person to work with. You're an amazing person to learn from. I'm super excited to hear your presentation. And if you have anything else to say about yourself, we'd love to hear it. But if not, go ahead and take the floor.
Nope, I think you covered it. We have a lot to cover today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can start in on the presentation.
Sorry, I'm trying to unshare here. There you go.
We all set?
You should be good. We can see it.
Okay, great. All right, well, welcome everybody. We're on both sides of the coast, so good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at. We're going to talk about estimating, and I love to put it as estimating for the win. And you'll see as we go through why I think estimating is the win. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover why estimating for the win, not training your estimators, the penalty, the consequences of using inexperienced estimators, the estimator versus the takeoff person, estimating department checkup, and the importance of weekly estimating meetings, making the most of that pre-bid, risk management and estimating, very important part that we're going to cover, and key principles of submitting better bids. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a sales proposal at the end. That's where you bring it all together. So whether you are a residential contractor, a commercial contractor, you're an owner operator that's bidding, estimating, selling, and performing the work, you're going to get some tips out of here that should be able to help you very well at what you do. So I want to talk a little bit about why estimating for the win, right? A solid, accurate, and consistent estimating strategy and program is an absolute for the foundation of your company's other operations. And I put it here very simply. Estimating leads to sales, which goes to your operations. If you don't have a proper foundation in estimating and your costs to do a project are correct, nothing else matters. You're selling at a margin that doesn't exist because your costs are off, and you're out there installing any kind of product that is not going to be very successful, or you could go out of pocket because you don't have the costs up front right. So the other two are totally dependent upon your estimating skills. So estimating for the win, it's about choosing the most affordable alternative that fulfills the client's need, and that also will be successful against your competition. So strategy provides insight into your competitive positioning, strategic partnering, risk tolerance, customer relations, and your optimal bid strategy. You can break it down into pretty much 7 simple steps, right? Gather your market intelligence. Your marketing personnel can identify competitors' possible strategies. Again, if you don't have a marketing personnel, you are that marketing personnel running your company. You know your competition well. Try to understand what their strategies are so that you're prepared of what you're going up against. Determine requirements and features. So again, when you're going out to put a bid, an estimate for a bid together, what are the requirements and features of that particular project? If, review or plan out the design. So if it's a pre-designed project, remodel, roofing project, you're going to probably have plans and specifications, but if not, you want to plan that out yourself and get prepared. So this is kind of just an overall. Then determine some viable alternatives. What I mean by that is I'm going to tell you straight up front, I really hate the terms good, better, best. A lot of people put a proposal in and they, which we'll cover in the end on proposals, good price, good option, a better option, and best option. I'll tell you right now, you don't want to propose that way, and here's why. The majority of people will never get past your cheapest price, regardless of the value you're bringing with the other two options. So I always find it best, if you do your homework, you're going to go in with the best option, whether it's a good, better, or best price, but you're going in with that option, and you can always come back with another one. But if it's there, they will only focus on the lowest price you have. Cost analysis and estimation of alternatives. Again, you got to look at what the price is going to look at your strategy for pricing. Estimation alternatives, again, goes back to putting your pricing together for these alternates you might put in of your best selection. And then again, like I said, select that best alternative. So whatever you feel fits that client, the project, and the needs the best, that's what you want to go in with. And then you establish your price. Your price is not the estimate. The cost is your estimate. The price is what includes your overhead, and which is your markup, and what profit margin you want to make on that project, which is a lot of times, I will tell you, your overall sales price is absolutely limited by what the market will bear, but you decide what that is and you can sell to that. So again, what do you need to make this work? You need the right team, you need a solid process, and it needs to be led. You need the leadership in the company, which is usually the person that is either, if it's a larger company, directing the estimating team, or in a smaller company, hands-on, it's the owner. So not training your estimators. I'll tell you right now, whether you have a full-time estimator, your salespeople, which we talk about later, are doing the estimating, or you as an owner operator are putting a price together, which means you're estimating, and then you're going out and selling it. The number one reason that contracting business go out of business is due to poor estimating. It's not due to any of the other things that are out there, economy, recession, or having disasters or catastrophes in the field. It is having a poor estimate. So let's look into what it's all about. So again, greatest thing you can do today is get young people in. You're going to get somebody possibly in the position to put prices together, estimating your company, that may not have the experience. So you don't want to get them off on the wrong foot. You want, excessive amount of labor they're going to take to put a price together. And a lot of times experienced people come in and tell you, oh, I know how to price that particular project. They don't. You're wasting time and all of it. And if you're going to use software, which the majority of contractors do use a form of software today, you're going to have a poor efficiency in using that software because you don't understand what goes into actually putting an estimate together. Lack of proper understanding of potential labor risks. There's labor risks in every project that you do. Even if you have subcontractors, you have to understand what is required to put that project together to make sure it is properly covered, either through internal in-house labor or through a subcontractor that has covered everything that you want. Lack of quality and accurate takeoffs. This is where it all begins. I don't care if you're doing a roof, you're doing a siding, windows, kitchen remodel, it does not matter. Full house renovation, building them from new. If you don't have an accurate takeoff, your pricing is not going to be correct. Consistent low bid numbers or excessive high bid numbers. Usually people who don't know how to price correctly are consistently throwing out low numbers, which will put you out of business very quickly, or their prices are so high because they're trying to cover what they don't know, you won't land any work. So that's the two extremes. And at bottom line is your company reputation's at risk. They're not going to use you again if you've done a poor job right from the beginning. So, picking your team, finding the right person is key. I know you hear this all the time, is finding the right person for any position is key. But this is really particular. Someone putting prices together in your company has to have the necessary skills to become a quality estimator. Not everyone can estimate. Invest in quality and intense training. You want to make sure, especially someone new out there, you're going to get them trained. You may be the person to do that, especially in a smaller company. You may not have the time. Reach outside. There are places you can get trained and learn more about it. And you want to provide them with good structure and organization. Estimators work best behind a closed door when they're putting the pricing together without interruption and have organizational skills about them. That's your right person to pick for an estimator. So again, estimator versus takeoff person. A lot of times, companies have takeoff people. You might have somebody out in the field, whether you're residential or commercial, you have someone out there gathering your measurements, gathering the information, making the initial appointment. That's really a takeoff person. They're getting all the things coming back in, but somebody's got to put a price on it, whether it is a dedicated estimator, you as the owner. That is where the estimating skills come in. So again, a takeoff person is no more an estimator than a laborer is a roofer, journeyman, a skilled person. Takeoff person trying to function as an estimator is costly, extremely costly. It's going to cost you money because things will be missed. They have to be trained. Again, I want to talk about some guiding principles that you want to keep in mind. Match the responsibilities of the job position with the employee's abilities. Again, I'm not talking about a job description at this point. You want to make sure that they understand math. Math is extremely important. You have to understand the basics of construction math. You need to know a little bit about geometry, algebra, formulas. This pays off in the long run. It's not about just taking an electronic download of something and hoping the measurements are right. You got to understand how it gets there. And that's where an estimator comes into their own and starts to be able to use their abilities to really, really shine. Look for potential. You'll hire somebody in a position, or you'll find somebody you may be out and meet. They may have the potential to become a great estimator, putting those prices together for your company. Because even if you're an owner operator, as you grow, you need to develop into the point where someone can price your work for you. Have a detailed job description as you grow for each position in your estimating department and your company, for that matter. It's real important that everybody knows what they do, who they report to, how you expect it to be done. Now, again, when you're first starting out, this can become, very cumbersome, and you don't necessarily need it if you're the one that's doing it. But as you grow, you don't want to start off on the wrong foot, because remember, bad habits are very hard to break. Therefore, quality training for employees is the way to go so they pick up good habits. Bad habit, like a good habit, after 30 days becomes ingrained in somebody, regardless what it is, and it's very hard to change them after that. So principles to keep in mind. Is it better not to bid a project than allow someone without the proper skill set to perform a proper estimate? My opinion, absolutely yes. I've had experience where I've had somebody come in and work with me and say, hey, we're looking at a project. I'm like, and they go, oh yeah, I've done a lot with that type of system. Or, if you're a roofer and you've never done siding, you got to be real cautious at that. Do you have the right skill set to do it? Because if you put a price together and you're too low, you're only ever one really bad job from going out of business. That's the way it works in our industry. Quick example on that is if you have a job that loses $100,000 and you normally make $10,000 on every new every good project, it's going to take you 10 jobs just to get back to zero. So you can see how that could be hindersome besides cash flow restrictions. You're not going to save money when you compensate low-skilled employees to do a job that requires higher skills. So don't hire somebody at a low wage because you want them to do a higher wage job. Figure it out. This skill is worth paying for if you got the right person doing it. Again, hire that right person with the right skills. Test them right up front. Give them an example. If you're an owner, you're ready to expand, you know how to do what you're doing. Talk to them, giving them a quick example of how to put something together. Ask them what they think the job should take. Don't just hire somebody on their word. So, estimating department checkup. Now, this can be, I want to stress this, whether you have a full-fledged estimating department or you're doing it yourself, these are things you need to ask yourself if you're alone, or things you need to ask of your department. Check into them. Know the health of your estimating department. And what I mean by that is not physical health, but how well is that department functioning, or that estimator, or you putting the prices. Do you have good organization? You have to have good organization to be a good estimator. And I'm not talking about a clean desk with papers. I'm talking about the ability to organize a bid from start to finish to make sure it's priced properly and leave enough time to get it done correctly. Once a detailed organizational structure is in place, effective leadership is necessary. You have to lead people. You have to, as your company grows, you're going to need to lead. Your estimating team will work more effectively with good organization and strong leadership. Again, even if you have a sales force out there, if you're a residential company and you have it set up on a pricing structure where you're putting bids out and your salespeople are in charge of it, still somebody's got to lead and make sure things are being done properly. Is the person running your estimating team trained with leadership skills and structural understanding how to run that department? This is also for your sales department or any other department you have in your company. So a lot of times people get promoted into position and no one's ever taken the time to teach them the skills to manage and lead a team. They may be great at what they do. It's just like a roofer or a construction worker coming in out of the field to start their own business. You may be excellent in the trades at what you do, but you may not have been trained how to run your business. Same works here. Develop estimating principles that will minimize mistakes and provide you with confidence on bid day or proposal submittal day. So you want to make sure that you have this structured. And I know at the end we'll talk about that. We've got some handouts that's going to be sent out later on that will help you through this. Checkup questions. These are questions you can ask yourself if you're doing it, or you can ask your team if they're doing it. Does not matter. Our estimates completed within a minimum of 24 hours before you want to submit them. Absolutely, they should be. You have to have time to really digest it, think about it, make sure your pricing strategy is correct. And if an owner calls you up, your prospect calls you up and says, hey, I need to make a change. I want you to add on this or do this. You've got time to do it. You're not still trying to get the initial scope of work out. Do your estimators maintain a quotation file, whether it is in a software program or you're doing it in a manila folder, if that's the stage you're at, does not matter. You should have a complete file listing everything that goes into that estimate from manufacturers, vendor quotes, lead times, subcontractors, anything that you do, your communications back and forth, all that needs to be kept. Do you have a master list of bid exclusions and qualifications? Absolutely recommend this, that when you put out a proposal or that has these exclusions and qualifications, you come up with a list in your own company of what you're always going to exclude or what you're always going to include. A lot of companies don't do certain things, so you want to exclude that or include it. Now, there are going to be changes on job-specific inclusions and exclusions. That's okay, but you want consistency coming out of your proposals. Do you have an estimating sequence for your estimators to follow? Absolutely should have an estimating sequence. You should best estimate the same way you build a project. That will be sent out on a download. That'll help you really kind of nice little cheat sheet I put together. Do you have an estimate checklist? You should. Every company's different depending on how far along you are or the how many people are in your company or the type of work you do or the volume of work you do. But there should be a checklist that is performed before someone who actually does the final check gets to make sure that everything has been properly done. You got quotes, you've asked the questions, you've got all the materials covered, you add the either labor in-house, sub equipment, rental equipment, whatever it may be. Have a checklist to make sure it's done. You got to have a bid follow-up policy. Even if you're lucky enough, and I say lucky because you need to try to do that, is to get that in-person delivery of your bid, your proposal out there. Sometimes they're not there. You have to leave it. They force you to email it, whatever that reason may be. If you can't, or even if you go and hand deliver it, they're not going to make the decision no matter how hard you try to close or get that job to sell out. You got to have a bid follow-up policy. I can tell you right now, my experience over all the years I've been doing this, the only bid up follow-up policy that's worth a darn is until it's lost or contracted, you got to keep following up on it. Don't ever take an excuse. You're leaving messages, you're doing this. You got to be aggressive. And as you grow and you are running an estimating department, you will get a lot of excuses of what work you think you got coming in. You want to make sure you've got enough work coming in and it's actually solid pipeline material. So have a good policy in place that works with your company. This even works if you're doing insurance work. Whatever it is, you need to know what is real and what's not real. Do you have a turnover project handoff procedure of the successful estimate to your project manager? Now, again, depending on the size of your company, somebody, unless you're the owner operator that is estimating the work, selling the work, and physically installing the work, that's the only way you might be able to get around this. But if you have any other people in there, you've got to have a handoff procedure from how this project was estimated and sold to how you plan on executing it in the field. That is where most money is lost on what I call the stupid side, because it's just poor communication within your internal company that will burn money right up inside and throw it out the door that there's no reason for other than poor communication. Importance of an weekly estimating meeting. Again, depending on where you're at, this is something you're going to grow into. But if you have people that are putting prices together, people that are selling, even if they happen to be the same, somebody needs to hold them accountable through these meetings. That could be the owner of the company. It could be a designated senior manager in the company. Again, this depends on your structure. But these tips work regardless. And actually, if you're the sole proprietor doing your own, these are questions you got to ask yourself for your own internal weekly meeting. So you want to maximize your resources. You want to create a purpose. And the top priority is to address current and future estimates. Make it routine. Have it same time, same day, each week. Excuse people that can't make it on that basis, but don't cancel a meeting. Get with your team, decide on what day works best. Always have an operations review day and a bid day. You can set them up early in your company for success. Review the successful bids and completed projects. Yes, you do want to know about a project completed if you're putting prices together, whether it came in as it was estimated or it did not. You need this historical data to make you more successful in the future. Study your estimating history. This will provide valuable information for your estimators. Again, your own, as you grow in your company, your own historical data is absolutely the best route to your success on how to make profit on the next job. Your pricings will change because costs go up, but the strategy of how long it takes or how you executed that through the way you estimate, that's going to be part of your estimating history. And it also will tell you the types of projects you're good at and the types of projects you're not good at. So that's something you want to really, really delve into. Making the most of the pre-bid. Again, as you grow, whether you're residential or not, residential contractors eventually go out and become, most of them, some sort of commercial work. Or these even have pre-bids and site visits on residential, depending on what you're doing. Apartment houses, condos, insurance work, a lot of projects we do have these. So a pre-bid and a site visit, they're two different things in bid preparation. Pre-bid is not always hold on the project location. Sometimes the owner of a building or the city or whoever may have it will have you come to a location that is not where the project is. And they're going to give you all the information you need to, propose a scope of work on their project. Site visits, you have to do a site visit. I don't care what it is. The most mistakes happen even if you're getting aerials and digitizing takeoffs. If no one's ever visiting a site at all before you're putting a bid together, it's always dangerous, especially when you move into commercial, especially commercial. Again, how do you know if there's two roofs on a building unless someone takes a look at the building? You're not going to know. There's no way of knowing that from an aerial. There's no way of knowing that from a digital takeoff. So again, not always has to be the estimator, because your person putting the pricing together, their sole purpose may be bidding, getting the work ready for you to sell, and they don't have time to do that. You got somebody out on the road can hit a lot of projects in a day and gather this information so you can be successful. So again, use these to your benefit. Pre-bids would only happen if it's a requirement by the owner that you're going to be working for usually, but a site visit works whether it's private work or public work or new construction work. If the project, you're going to bid off a set of plans on new construction work, do a site visit if possible before you go to start the job project. So if something wasn't on those plans, you can pick it up before you hit the site. Risk management and estimating. I love this. I call it preliminary risk analysis, or PRA. Love fancy words, right? All this is something that is so underutilized in the construction industry. It's going to, one, if you do this correctly, it's going to prevent you from wasting of your resources. An estimator, a salesperson, whatever it is, they're your resource. Admin preparing something, there's only so many hours in the day and only so much they can do. So putting them on something that is not best fit for your company is a waste of your resources. Useful factoring and selecting projects to bid. So in this process, I call simply a bid filter. You should develop a process within your company, regardless of your size, what projects you can bid on successfully and what projects you may not be able to bid on successfully for whatever the reasons are. That way, when someone gets a call or an invite, you're going to filter it right from the beginning if it's worth your time to even take a look at. How do you do this? There's just some simple questions you ask yourself. One is you need to know your organization. You need to know your company. And what I mean by knowing your company is you need to know what your capabilities are, right? Not everyone can do everything. We all like to. And the hardest thing that a roofer or a contractor can do is walk away from a project or admit that they may not be good at doing something. Example, if you are a 100% residential contractor and someone invites you to bid a large commercial project, you may not have the capabilities of doing that. So know that in your organization. If you're a roofer and you're also good at siding and you also do windows, you see where I'm going? Now you know when those projects come in, you can bid on them. Know what you're good at, know what you're not good at. Your historical data will tell you what you're not successful at, and you should use that as a guide to prepare when you're knowing your organization. So why do you need to identify these risks, right? Why is it worth taking, the ones outside your company comfort zone? It is at times, right? Now, what I'm telling you to do is not bid on something, but I'm telling you to use this process to make sure that you know the risks. We're going to talk about those. There's a schedule risk, there's a pricing risk, backlog risk, your contractual and general conditions risk, and then finally insurance. I know first question I get asked when somebody sees this, when I'm doing these live, isn't schedule and backlog risk the same exact thing? No, they're actually not. We're going to talk about it why. So scheduling risk has nothing to do with the amount of work that you have on hand. Has nothing to do whether you need a project or don't need a project because you're booked out in operations, right? Scheduling risk is when someone wants you to do a project, this is their schedule. Let's look at this. They're going to give you 30 days to do this project, right? They're telling you that up front. From start to finish, it's 30 days, and then you're going to owe them money through liquidated damages, let's say, if you can't meet that schedule. You're looking at this and say, this is not my type of work. I can't do it. I don't have enough labor. I don't have enough subcontractors, or the material that's been specified is not available within that time frame after signing the contract. That's what you want to look at for scheduling risk. Again, I'm not telling you not to bid something like that, but knowing this up front and be able to pre-negotiate this with your client, your prospect, and owner is worth gold because you're not going to get caught in the end. Pricing risk. Again, I'm not talking about materials going up or the cost. What I'm talking about on a pricing risk is when you decide to expand in your business or expand in your line of work to take on another type of work that you normally don't do. Like I said, example, if you've never done siding or you've never done waterproofing or whatever it may happen to be, or you're a great exterior remodel contractor, and all of a sudden you got an opportunity to go in and tear a kitchen and a bathroom out and remodel it. Have you ever done this before? Has anyone in your company ever worked on this? That's a pricing risk. Again, we all have to take on a pricing risk when we go to that initial expansion, but know that up front, make sure all the eyes are on it, and most importantly, if you're an owner of the company, you're making that final decision on what price you're going in at to do that job. Again, other things fall into pricing risk, but that's like the best example I like to use because that really, all contractors expand and grow, and that's a good way of looking at it. Now, backlog risk, that's where it comes into too much work, too little work. You will ultimately, or you should have a strategy of adjusting your pricing based upon what your backlog is. When I say pricing, you're never adjusting your cost. An estimated cost is what it is to get anything done. It is your profit margin that will adjust up and down. All contractors do it. It's a way of life. It has to be done. The busier you are, the higher your prices should be to control the amount of work coming in. And the more you need work, you're going to lower that margin down to whatever you feel is the lowest you can go for your company, but never ever below your break-even cost, because you're just going to pay to do the project. Project not being done is better than paying someone to do it. So you have to end up knowing what your break-even cost is in your company. So again, backlog risk, can you do it? Do you have the opening? Do you have too many people scheduled? Do you need to pay overtime to get it done? Do you need to hire 2 subs? It may be a project you want to do, and you do have backlog risk on it, but bid it and estimate it accordingly. Additional crews, additional labor, additional subs, whatever it is to get it done. Know that up front. Contractual risks. These are like, no one wants to read a contract up front. If you're working for a new client and they have their own form of contract, you want to make sure you see that up front and read it. If you're doing public work or commercial work, there's general conditions, sometimes insurance work too. Make sure you know what they are so that you are going to accommodate in your costs for whatever that may be that is included in either the general conditions or contract. Insurance. This is a big one. I get asked questions all the time on the consulting side of my business. How much insurance is enough? A lot of times, smaller companies, when they start out, have the basic insurance requirements that are required in their state to operate. That doesn't mean that's going to be acceptable by somebody that you're owning. Again, and you're working for as an owner. Again, make sure that when someone says to you, do you have this insurance? And you just say yes, and your project's contingent upon having that, and you sign on the dotted line, it's going to come out of your pocket to increase the insurance to where it needs to be. So keep these in mind as you're doing it. These are all risk. If you do this, you're knocking out 90% of that why contractors go out of business right on the front end. So key principles for submitting better bids. Bid the right projects. Again, bid what you're best at. Whatever your core competencies are, those are the projects you should not hesitate going after. The ones that are not your core competency, that's where you got to do your risk analysis and so forth on, right? Always visit the site and attend any pre-bid meetings that are there. Seek project clarification. This works the same as if you're working directly for an owner or there's a general contractor involved. Specifier, it does not matter. If there's something you don't understand that they want you to do or to include in your proposal, you want to clarify that in the front end before you price it. Again, always perform accurate takeoffs. It's essential to have everything right up front. Avoid mathematical errors. Even if you're using software, if you're not, you're doing that manual takeoff, don't make a mistake on your math. And if you're doing an estimate on a spreadsheet in Excel, which a lot of us do, make sure your formulas are right. Double check it. Don't think because it's been a locked formula, it's going to always come out right. Unfortunately, those things get messed up. You want to make sure your math is correct. Take the time to check your math. Evaluate all your pricing. In today's day and age, your quotations coming from suppliers a little bit more stable now than they were before. But make sure that when your project is going to start, you actually have coverage to lock that quote in, or what is the price going to be in everybody's best judgment, and get that included in the front end, or have it as an add-on, whatever it takes in your negotiations, get it out in the front end. Have all your expenses. An estimator should never, ever make a mistake on costs of materials, subcontractors, equipment, and so forth, and subcontractors. Make sure they're included. All that should be. Identify and manage risks, like we talked about in the early part of the risk analysis. Make sure you've identified all those and you've covered your costs in the front end. Labor costs, okay? Labor costs, even if you're using sub-labor, this is where most estimates or projects can go awry. No matter how good an estimator is, the most seasoned estimator this is where the guesstimating part comes in. You got to have it with historical data. You can use cost, if it's something out there, you can even use the cost analysis books that are out there, Reeds and Walker and all the different ones that give you an idea where it should be. but every project is different and you have to account for that. So labor costs on an estimate when a project's done, if you've got a 5% overrun, that's really not that bad, okay? Your goal is not to have an overrun, but I will tell you labor is usually accurate no matter who you are. It's about 90-95% at the best. Subcontractors, well, you have to be careful on that. You are limiting your risk because they're doing the work for you, but make sure you've given them a detailed scope of work to bid off of, right? They're going to give you a quote. Maybe their quote doesn't match what you expect them to do. They're not just going to do it. Even if they worked for you for a long time, very rarely is anybody going to eat money and not walk away, especially today when labor subcontractors are wanted everywhere. Material and equipment costs. Again, we talked about this. This has to be 100% accurate. There's no reason for missing materials or missing equipment. And if you are, we're going to talk about in our proposal section coming up the difference between a lot of these documents, but an incomplete bid form and documents is where I've seen most bids get rejected. And I've also seen from poor proposals being done from a contractor that didn't include what they were supposed to do, but the owner expected it. It ends up being a legal battle at the end. So make sure everything, the old saying, dot your I's and cross your T's, make sure you do that. That's so important on the front end to get to. So I want to talk a minute about writing sales proposals, right? You've heard these terms, right? What should I submit to my client? Quote, an estimate, a bid, proposal. You've seen out there, you provide free estimates. I give free quotes. I'm going to give you a bid. I'm going to give you a proposal. Aren't they all the same? No, they're really not. And I want to go through this just a little bit here today so you understand the differences. I want to set you apart. I want to set you apart to sell. Once you get your pricing correct, I want you to be able to sell and make money. So while the differences between an estimate, quote, and bid and a proposal may be confusing to understand, knowing the difference is absolutely crucial to the success of your projects. And I'll tell you why. So the difference, a quote, even though we use that, I'm going to give you a quote. A quote in our industry is really only what you get from a supplier for the price of materials you need for a job. Now, we can have a back and forth, a debate on that, and somebody said, no, I give a quote, it's saying no. I'm telling you, in the construction jargon of hierarchy, that's what a quote is. An estimate, I give a free, you never give an estimate truly to a client, and even though you'll tell them, you may tell them that, but you don't. An estimate's used to calculate your expected cost to complete a project. Unless it is needed for insurance reasons or other reasons, why would you ever want to give an estimate to a client that shows all your takeoff and all your costs and how much you're going to make on a project? You don't. There's no reason for that, unless, like I said, it's through insurance or something like that. An estimate will also include, you have to include your taxes, your overhead, your subcontractor, any equipment costs that are required. Contractors should work up estimates when they're drafting the bid or proposal. Okay, so we see that this is all pre-stuff that has nothing to do with actually selling to your client. So again, what is a bid? A bid is the price you put on a specific document that your client supplies you for a scope of work they designate. So when you say you're giving someone a bid, that's really, if I'm hiring you and I say, look, this is what I want done. I want these 10 things done and I want no more, no less. This is what I want you to price. You're submitting a bid. You really, at that point, do not need to put a proposal or a scope together because you're already given some sort of format of how to bid. Happens a lot in insurance work, happens in public work, happens in commercial work a lot. Subcontractor, now they will also submit a bid to you to perform a specific scope that you request for one of your projects. This is really what you should do. You should have a scope of what you want your subcontractors to bid upon on any one of your projects. This guarantees you your pricings are accurate between subcontractor bids, or at least comparable, and that you're also getting the full pricing back for the scope that you desire. So proposal. Proposal is a detailed document you prepare to win business. So now you can see we covered the first three, but this is where you go in and actually bring business in the door. It's part of your sales process after you work up the estimated cost, overhead, profit in the project. So, for example, a proposal can include the type of siding, brick, stucco, exterior of a building, type of windows, roofing, et cetera, as well as the timeline you're going to do in the project. And you want to include your schedule of payments, right? You want to dictate the payment terms. You want to control the cash flow. So it also should include include your exclusions or inclusions, place and a place for the customer to sign that represents they accepted your proposal. After the close of the sale, this will become your contract. So this is going to become your legal binding contract if you're the one preparing it. But this is a fantastic sales tool to get a job closed. So what are 3 fundamental objectives of a sales proposal? So what is your goal to put these together? You need to educate your client about their full needs. So you're educating them by what they need based upon what you heard when you were doing your preliminary sales call, or you have somebody out visiting, talking to that client, right? That's how you got to your scope, what they were looking to do. Frequently, the prospective client may only be aware of a portion of what they need. This is where your expertise can come in. They may be feeling what they need or gave you partial what they need, but this is where you can really put down on paper of what it's going to take to satisfy them. This is a perfect opportunity to demonstrate your ability to see that big picture as an objective expert. I don't care if you're a one-person operation or you're a multi-million-dollar company. This is where you separate yourself from your competition. And most people are lazy and do not do a very good job at putting a sales proposal together. I hate quotation sheets that get turned in, even if you're doing residential work. You take the time to put a proposal together, and it doesn't take time, especially today with the electronics we have in document software. But you put your template together that you can actually show where you're the best at what you do. You're going to separate yourself from everybody else that went down to the Staples or other stores and bought a quotation pad, and that's what they're submitting. Your proposal needs to convince your prospect that you have the competence to deliver what they need. They need to be convinced by reading your scope of work and other things. We'll cover that in the next slide, of what you're putting into your proposal, that you are the competent expert that they need to do the job. We're not even talking about price, if you notice yet. Price should not matter at this point, putting it together. And your proposal justifies the prospect's investment in useful and understandable terms to the client. So again, they need to understand if you're doing a project and it's going, your proposed cost to them with all your profit and overhead on it is $50,000. How you have to justify why your price is a value that they can understand. You got to keep it simple, but they got to understand your value. So in the body of your proposal, these are just some tips to think about, right? Sales proposals include an introduction, which is what you're doing, the definition of the project or need, right? Discussion of your approach, how are you going to do it? The benefits of your service compared to others, so you don't compare yourself to your competition. You want to stand yourself out. You know what your competition does. What do you do differently? Example, benefits of your service. You're an owner-operator. I'm here, I'm selling you this project, Mr. Owner. I am going to make sure I'm there when the project's done. Or if you're a larger company, I have a quality control agent that signs up. Whatever it is that stands out, that's a benefit of your service. Not that you put on this type of system compared to that type of system. That's really not a benefit of your service. And the costs associated with doing work. The last thing they should get to is the price. That's why I love getting out there on a face-to-face, or at least if you have to send it electronically, try sending something without your price on it and get it. They'll call you back. Well, you didn't include your price. Well, no, I want to review the proposal with you. Then I will tell you what the price will be. At least you get that face-to-face. So these are things that work. So there's 2 things I want to cover out of that. One of them in more details, benefits of your service, right? This is a critical part of your sales proposal. Don't withhold information about yourself that is pertinent. Present any possible upside that you can provide. Don't babble on with useless stuff like, oh, I'm the best contractor. I do better than everybody else. No, what do you do? Why are you better at doing something than most of the rest of the people in your industry? You may not know that without sitting and taking the time to think about it, but I guarantee you, you're doing something better than your competition. Whether you're trained in the field, now you're running your own company, whatever it is, explain what your significant benefits are. And when we're creating your list, always keep in mind what you can do to make your prospect successful and make them look good to their stakeholder. So this is important if you're working not so much for direct homeowner, but let's just say now you're working residential, doing an apartment building or a condo, or you're moving into the commercial world. A lot of times the person that's in charge of a project is not necessarily the owner of that particular project. They have to report to somebody. So if you have the opportunity that there's a middle person in between, you want to put in there the benefits that you're going to bring to make them look good with the owner. Now, of course, you're not going to say it that way, but you're going to say, look, we're going to solve your problems. We know your biggest problem is you don't want to have the president's office worked over on a weekend. We're going to make sure that happens, whatever that may be. That's your benefits. So the cost associated with doing work. This is your pricing finally, right? So it's extremely important where you place this information in your proposal. Do not include the cost initially before you've had a chance to explain your approach and the resulting benefits fully. If you include the cost too early, it may cause them to reject the proposal before they've had a chance to understand its significance. This is where the good, better, best comes in. If you're listing 3 prices at the end for good, better, best options, they will only focus on the cheapest price and they do not care what benefits that you're going to give them for the next 2 options. So I recommend you go in with what you feel is the best option. And also why I don't like to just email a proposal with a price on it, especially to someone you do not have a relationship with that is just going to look at your price and look at the other 3 or maybe more prices they got and say, oh, well, you're not low. We're not, you're not giving anything. But if you've done a detailed proposal, most people that have sense that want a project done correctly, especially if it's their own home or their own building or their own store, they're going to look at what you're going to provide. So even if you have to submit it in with a price on it, if you do everything else right that we talked about in the body of your proposal, you're going to separate yourself from the person that is submitted in a quotation sheet that basically says, I'm going to tear this off and replace this. Here's your cost. It leaves too much open. So there's usually costs that are not within your control. So if it is a roofing project, there's deck replacement, could be wood nail around the outside fascia, etc. Doesn't matter what it is. Whatever your scope, your contracting business does, there's always what we call hidden unknowns. If you know that on any of a remodel, then include that in there. If we run into this, this is the price to do that. Square foot price, linear foot price, whatever it may be. You should include it in your proposal because that alerts them early that that's a discussion item. Worst thing that happens is you sign it and you come back later and submit a bill, an invoice in for extras that was never brought up through the sales process. People do not want to pay. So again, I could spend an entire day on the sales proposal, but I want to kind of wrap up so we get to questions. So we are at the end. So I want to look at this from get your pricing correct, right? Come up with a pricing strategy, which means get your costs correct, get your overhead covered, and decide on the profit margin that you need, can get for the project or what the project demands. And then you got to go sell it. That's why I wanted to cover the proposal at the end. So if you go back through that on the replay and look at those and get away from the mindset of quotation, what an estimate truly is and what a bid is, and get into that sales proposals mindset and actually get in front of your client and do that show and show them what you can do and review it, pricing then moves away. It really does. I mean, I know you've heard a lot out there in other trainings that you see in sales trainings that all pricing doesn't matter. It does. You're only going to get what any market allows you to get, and that is different in every market in the country. But you can get more than your competition if you can prove you're a better value of service and you're providing more for that owner. So I want you to keep that in mind. Those are some really essential things to help your business be successful. Again, it comes down to one simple saying, know your numbers. So that's all I have for today.
Thank you so much, John. I always love listening to you talk. I learned so much. I've seen you do this presentation before, and it was so much new content in it. And it wasn't even that long ago that I heard it. So thank you so much for coming today and sharing all of that information. I have a very special announcement for our registrants. John Kenny has graciously given 2 PDFs that you'll be receiving in an email from me in just a few days. John, do you want to tell them a little bit about what they will be receiving in those giveaways?
Yeah, absolutely. So I put together, we covered the estimating sequence. So I put together I think it's a 3-page document that you'll get that actually runs through the estimating sequence that you can follow in your own company. Again, whether you are an owner operator, one person shop, or you are multiple employed company, it does not matter. This sequence will work. So that rather than just what you can get off of me saying today, I put that together so you can take it back with you. Then the other one is on profit formulas. I really want you to understand the difference between markup, gross profit, and net profit, because those are key successes to running your business. And as you grow, you really need to, that is your gold key to understand the difference. So I put that together with you. We didn't specifically cover that today. Again, that's a whole presentation in itself, but it's going to give you the information you need to know what a markup is in your company and how to do it. It's going to tell you how to get to your gross profit. And it's also going to tell you how to figure out your net profit, which is, being in business, that net is that bottom line, black line at the end of your financial statement. That's actually what you're worth and whether it was worth being in business that year or not. So I want you to learn how to do that. So that's the second handout you'll be getting.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for explaining that. So like I mentioned, you'll be getting an email from us in just a few days with the link to this recording so that you can share it with all your friends and coworkers and rewatch it for your own good as well, in addition to those 2 giveaways. I will make sure to include John's information that you see here on the screen in that email. So if you do have any questions about today's presentation or the giveaways, you can reach out and get some answers for that. We did have one question pop up in the chat box that I would love for you to answer. Anne-Marie asked, do you have any recommendations around doing post-project reviews to compare estimates cost to the actual cost?
Sure. So post-project reviews, and you'll even hear about them in the industry called postmortems, right? Because they're so important, but they're frowned upon because no one wants to take the time to hear that something might be wrong. I like to look at them the other way. First of all, your first tip is always look at these as a positive learning lesson for everyone involved. Whether something is wrong or something's great, you want to review it. So the first key is you've got a budget on a project. And that's why we do these, seminars on estimating. If your costs are all right in the beginning and you can track them, like how much, your labor is, your subcontractors, your equipment, you estimate them correctly, you'll have all these 5 or 6 columns that are explained out, and that's your budget, right? So your budgeted items are your costs. Then when you're completed, you should have through your accounting system or however you're doing it, you want those broken down the same way. If you're buying materials, you want the materials lumped in the same way that you budgeted them. You want your labor, your subcontractors the same way you budget them, equipment, etc. You compare these columns together. Now, this is just the math part of it. You compare them together. Did you do better than budget? Were you on budget, or did you go over budget? So you say, well, a lot of times contractors say, well, I'm under budget. We're all good. Let's move on to the next one. I don't recommend that. I recommend you take some time to figure out why you did so well on this project so you can repeat good history as well as avoiding bad history. And it also is a great booster for your team's morale to know why things went really well. If you're on budget, that's great too. That means you're hitting it right on the nail. And if you're over budget, why are you over budget? Let's say you're over budgeting in materials. What could be the reasons you're going to look at that? One reason may be, is the pricing different than what you estimated? So if that's the only reason you're over, then you need to find out why you spent more to buy it than what you thought it was going to cost you. Could be various reasons. You'll delve into that depending on your company. Another one is you may have used more material than what you estimated to use. That you want to find out, why did you do it? Was there more scope of work than you thought? I hate to say it, was there theft on a project? What are the reasons that come along with that? And the reason you want to look into that is so that you know why you got to that result. Was it an estimating error? Was it an unforeseen problem? Or was it poor production in the field? It just took, we broke something, we had to replace it, whatever. We signed for material we didn't get. Know that. Same goes for labor, same goes for sub. Look at those that way.
I hope that answered your question, Anne Marie. She said thank you in the chat box, John. So
Okay, great.
assuming she was satisfied with that answer. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. John, it's always lovely to have you on, to get to see you and talk to you again. If anyone has any additional questions, you can go ahead and either email the info@cottonyconsulting.com, or you can respond to the email that you will be receiving from me, a LEAP email, and I will make sure to get all of the answers over to John, and John will make sure to respond to all of them.
Happy
thank
to help
you so
out.
much. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye.